All right, so we've got a panel here, sanded to 60 grit, and we've got our new Pall-x Filler. So this is it's a fiber reinforced latex based wood filler. The fibers are to maintain size, so it doesn't suffer as much shrinkage when the water evaporates. It's designed to be mixed with sawdust from the floor. So if you need an exact match for a Brazilian cherry, an Ipe, a Santos mahogany, anything that's going to patina very specifically, or on a regular oak floor, you can mix it with decent 80 to 100 grit edger dust. Um, that is one way to use this product. Another way to use it that is very advantageous is to combine it with a competitor of ours, Woodwise. They're quick patch powders. They come in several different colors. And so if you're not looking for an actual exact patina match as the floor ages, um, these two products in conjunction will actually work. They actually help each other because this one is designed to be used in water. It's got an adhesive in it, but it does set up pretty quickly. Whereas this is an adhesive designed to be mixed with another dust. So now you have two adhesives and two non-shrinking fillers to work together. And it's one of the situations where they really work together well. If you've got large knot holes to fill, this stuff comes in a knot brown and a mineral streak black. And a lot of times you'll mix it up in a little cup like this, and you're going to end up wasting about half of it because it hardens before you can get it spread into all the knot holes. Well, you can keep it emulsified by adding a little bit more of this, a little bit more of the powders, and fill all those knot holes in a custom color. I really like when they're done in black. It just looks really sharp. They stand out. And again, it makes it where they're both the products actually work better. What we're going to do here today is we've got some red oak. We've got this panel. So we're just going to use them together. Again, this was a resand, so the sawdust wouldn't be appropriate here because it has some color in it. And we're going to be switching the color of this panel. Okay, so with this, so with the Pall-x Filler, like everything in the Pallmann line, cannot be overshaken. Shake everything with the Pallmann as much as you can or want to, cannot be overshaken. Again, this has some fibers in it, so the fibers can settle to the bottom. They need to be re-agitated into, you'll see when I poured it, it's a relatively thick viscosity, the adhesive itself. So, so shake it very well. You can actually see where some of the fiber has settled here, and this is clear carrying liquid, and the fiber is actually settled down here. So that's just, and these are designed not to shrink as they dry. So now you can kind of see we've got that, the line is the same color. We don't have all the fiber settled in the bottom. So again, don't be afraid to shake it. Shake it as much as you can. I like to mix this with either the sawdust or with the Woodwise powder in a separate container because I've had a couple instances where as I'm mixing it on the floor, make a little dust volcano, but I've had some of this leach into the floor before I could get it all mixed together. So I think it's a little bit cleaner to do it this way. Can be mixed together on the floor. I just think it's a little bit messier, so I like to do it this way. So get yourself some powder. In this case, I would say less is more. I have mixed up batches that I thought would be appropriate and it was way too much. So I just start with a couple little scoops of powder like that. Again, we're just on one 4x8 panel, so we don't need a ton. And then here you can adjust. So you can see it's a relatively thick liquid, but you can adjust at this point how thick you want your wood filler to be. So if you're working in big knots or really large gaps that you can just physically putty knife into one spot, mix it a little bit thicker. It's just less product to physically have to dry. It will just, there's less water in it, so it will have to dry. In this situation, we're going to want it pretty trowelable, pretty liquid because we're dealing with smaller gaps and not a huge area, so not a huge hole to fill. So I'm going to mix up just a little bit more here. So that's kind of one of the nice things about it, is you can kind of gauge exactly how much you're going to be needing. If you need a little bit more, you can mix up a little bit more. If you want a little bit thicker for one room, a little bit thinner for another room, you'll end up with the same result. So we'll just mix up enough here that we have some to trowel. So again, get it to the kind of the thickness that you want. Fairly runny, but not outrageous. So very low VOC. There's almost no odor to it at all. I don't want a bunch of complaints and comments on the stream here that that your rep doesn't have knee pads on. They didn't fit in my suitcase, so I didn't bring knee pads. So that's I'm not going to stand into it either, because I don't have that kind of flexibility. So we're going to kneel without knee pads, and it's fine. It's okay. I don't advise it, but. So get your puddle pulled out onto the floor. This product does need to be spread with a stainless steel trowel. So we're going to use the bladed, flexible stainless steel trowel. You can slide these up and down to adjust the firmness that you want. But do make sure these screws are tight, because you don't want this stiffening blade to come loose and fall all the way down. So you want it about like that, and then depending on and here we want to try to go not exactly perpendicular to the crack. We want to kind of go at an angle so that we're forcing it down into the physical gap itself. And then Heidi, if you kind of want to show like a gap here to just, it's going to look like any of the pre-mix fillers at this point. You'll see as it dries, it's going to dry a little bit clearer. But the main thing is that it's just, it's really a non-shrink filler. That's the most important part about it. Get just a little bit more out of here so we can finish off the panel, and then we're going to eat a little pizza before we come back. We're going to let it dry, and then we'll sand it off. Typical, it's going to dry very similar in time to most of the pre-mixed fillers out there, and that's going to be just completely dependent on climate and dependent on gap size. So there isn't any magic formula in here that's going to make it dry in an exact amount of time, but it's the dry times are very similar. And that's kind of Pall-x Filler in a nutshell. And like I say, mixed with sawdust for the perfect patina, or used in conjunction with Woodwise to get a to really aid in both products. They actually both will work better together. So, but again, if you can mix it with straight sawdust, Brazilian cherry, stuff like that, where you need it to patina perfectly, you won't have that pink stripe 2 years from now. It will age the same. Walnuts is the same way. And yeah, fantastic product. And at my advanced stage, this is a lot easier to carry than those 3-gallon jugs, because I don't know how they make them heavier every year, but they get heavier every year. Whereas this is, I can still carry this. So there you go. All right, guys. So just want to talk quickly about Pallmann's borderline obsession with sealers and how and what they do for the floor. And we're a 3-coat system. So we want 1 coat of sealer, We have 4 sealers on the line. We have clear and color here, and then we're 2 coats of finish. And we will guarantee, and I don't throw that word around lightly, we will promise you that 1 coat of sealer and 2 coats of finish will outperform 3 coats of finish every time. The way these are designed is to provide a small shock absorber at the floor. It's a larger molecule. It sits on top, gives you a higher build of finish to sit on top to protect the floor. And so that is why we are very, very sealer centric in our system of finishes. So we want a single coat of these and 2 coats of any of the finishes on top of that as our 3-coat system. And then we have clear, color, Nature's Own white seal as for design options, but the principle is the same, is that this is sealing the floor. The wood is moving all the time, so this is softer than finish, so it provides a slight shock absorber for the finish so it doesn't crack. And that is why we are very, very, very sealer centric. We're always going to want a sealer and 2 coats of finish in any application. Raw wood, stained wood, that's the route we're always going to advise you to go. And we have a lot of data to back up that it will perform better than 3 coats of finish. Hey guys, I'm RJ with Pallmann here at Floor Mechanics, talking about what is a surprise to me a little bit. So I was a contractor 24 years. I was an early convert to the Pallmann line. And when I took this job 8.5 years ago, I would have made 2 bets that you couldn't make a better sealer than our Pall-x 325, which has now been renamed Clear. We still have that in the line. And you couldn't make a better single component finish than 96. I was wrong in both cases. Pall-x Color is a color enhancing sealer that will lock in the color of the stain, and it's actually more forgiving than Clear. This is the most forgiving sealer on the market, bar none. And topped with Power, which is just now the premium single component product on the market. It breaks my heart a little bit, but it has outpaced 96 in its just chemical abilities, what it can do to the floor. It is a physically better single component than even 96 was. And if guys are if you're thinking about getting into waterborne, if you haven't made the switch yet, if you've struggled with other products, use this as your first coat and this as your second coat, and you will, if you just go through the system, we'll promise you that you will have success with it. It is very forgiving. It's very beautiful. This adds a little color. This is perfectly clear. The transition of the wood or the stain color is just so perfect, and it's locked in for so long because the way this product worked is it doesn't allow the stains to kind of fade with time, or the finish, that look that we've always gotten between an oil stain and a waterborne finish kind of becoming less lustrous over the years or a little bit foggy. This will really lock in that color. And then one of the Pallmann finishes on top. This is the premium single component. If you do those 2 together, like I say, you will be on a waterborne path, and it'll get you out of the oil modified world for sure. All right, guys. It's RJ again with Pallmann. We're going to get into putting down the nature seal and the white seal on these panels. And a little trick that I'm not going to take credit for it. Another territory manager of ours out of Tennessee, Jason Mack, came up with this, but it makes perfect sense when you think about it. It's a pigmented product, and you need it to absorb evenly. What's the best way to get the grain perfectly even? It's water popping. So even though this is technically kind of an extra step, these panels have been sanded to 100 grit mesh power on the spider, and then so they're not overly smooth, but they're pretty smooth. But to get that pigment to lay and absorb evenly, we're going to go ahead and water pop these. It's a nice little extra safety step. And then we'll get into the actual application of the nature seal and white seal and kind of how we like to do that. Million different ways to water pop. Pad, sprayer, rag by hand. These are obviously just 4x8 panels, so we're just going to go rag by hand. And unlike a stain, as long as these go back to visibly dry, we don't need to meter check these or anything. because we're a water-based product. So if we're visibly dry to the surface, we're good to go with the Nature Seal and White Seal. So, and it's just a nice little safety tip to get the pigment to absorb perfectly evenly. So. Still, you can never get it all. It's not possible. And again, it doesn't have to be overly wet, just surface wet. And then once we're surface dry, we'll be good to apply the Nature Seal and White Seal. Unlike a stain where you need to be very sure that your water is completely dry. So, hey guys, it's RJ with Pallmann. We're here today at Floor Mechanics talking about Nature Seal and White Seal specifically. So there are two newest sealers. They're not new. They've been around for a couple years now, but they are pigmented sealers. So they are identical products in the bottle. The only difference is physical pigment load. So Nature Seal is about 1.1% white. White Seal is 1.8% white. So it's about twice as white. Doesn't sound like a heavy pigment load, but it's a very powerful pigment. So it will make a white floor. If you do 2 coats with the White Seal, you will have a very white floor. Again, they are identical products. So if you can put a Nature Seal down, oh, we want a little bit whiter, you can coat over the top of that with White Seal. They could actually be mixed together if you needed to. Wouldn't advise it, it's hard to repair unless you have an exact ratio. But they are identical products except for pigment load. This is our standard 11 millimeter microfiber roller that we use for all of our waterborne products. Works fine with Nature Seal and White Seal. We also added a 9 millimeter, so a little bit shorter, just to control the amount of product that you're putting down on the floor. Either one of them will work. We kind of steer guys towards the shorter napped roller just because you can get less product on the floor, but either one of them will work. I've got the shorter napped roller loaded up on here. These products really like to work out of a paint tray with these products. It is very beneficial to get the product evenly, because if you pour it on the floor and you develop that line, now you have to move that line a lot to get it to disperse. Whereas I'll show you as we go through with the roller, we can put it evenly across our 4-foot coating area. So we don't have any walls here, so I won't go through the practice, but typically cut in just with a decent latex brush. And we're really making sure that we get it underneath any baseboards so we don't have a dark line right there at the baseboard. But as we cut in, we would cut our butt joints cross grain like this, tuck it under the baseboard. You can feather it out a little bit if you want. But really that's about all the cut in we're doing and then in our corners, we're going to cut our corners and our door jambs with the brush. Most of it we're doing with the roller. So that's the physical cut in. You can use a trim pad. You can use a brush. You could use a mini roller for a lot of it. I jumped ahead again. Heidi reminded me of this earlier. So one thing, this panel's been sanded to 100 grit mesh power on the spider. So relatively smooth, not overly smooth, but relatively smooth. But then to get the product even, one of our colleagues in our company, Jason Mack out of Nashville, Tennessee, he came to us after he got hired and he said, hey, every time I use a pigmented product, I like to water pop the floor. And I've been doing this for 32 years and I had never water popped before a sealer, but a light bulb went off for me. It really made sense that we're looking for even pigment absorption, just like you are with stain. So why wouldn't you water pop? It makes a lot of sense. So not 100% required, but it will make it easier to get these products even across the floor if you do water pop. You don't need to let the water pop dry overnight. These are water-based products, waterborne products. So at that point, once it is visibly dry on the surface, you're clear to go. Whereas if you're staining it, you need to meter check it or wait overnight to get that water to dry. So I'm going to pull up a little product in my big paint tray. I'm going to roll it back out so that I'm a pretty dry roller. I'm not dripping anywhere. And then in a big house or anywhere, I'm going to work in about a 4-foot wide section. And I'm going to spread the product out kind of like that, like what I call a W. And then I'll always leave on a corner wall. I'm always going to leave myself a place to step out so that I can cross cut in along the baseboard. So I can pull that out that distance away from the wall. That's how I move my cutout in and keep it all even everywhere. So I don't have a possibility of a transition between a brush or pad coat and the roller. So I'm going to cut that like that. I'm actually a little bit dry here, so I'm going to keep this shallow. So I'm going to come across, hand on top of the pole, a little bit of weight. I'm going to roll through it again, so now I get that entire 4-foot wide section wet. You can hear the roller. That's a little bit different from what we're used to. And then I'm going to come just slightly behind my wet line, and I'm going to feather this out. And this product, you can't physically overwork it like a lot of waterborne products. This you could roll through it as many times as you need to get it even. It is going to dry, so we do want to keep moving backwards. The length walls on a strip oak are not going to give you a lot of grief as far as overlapping them a little bit. This line is the line you want to keep moving backwards. So on a real hot day, maybe you're shrinking this down to about 3 feet. On a normal day, you're 4 to 5 feet wide across the room wall to wall. So that I'm going to go back in, get myself a little bit of product, roll it back out so that I'm pretty dry. Again, pretty dry. I'm going to do what I kind of call the W, where I just get it across the surface. Then I'm going to go through it. I'm not picking up the roller at this point. I'm just now going to get my entire surface, my entire square wet. Come across like that. Once I'm there, then I'm going to roll through it and feather out into the field. Okay, and if you have a heavy line like this, guys, come back in there and pick that up. Don't leave it there. It will show. It is white, so it will show. Then we're just going to repeat that process across the floor. These are solvent-free, so they're going to take longer to dry than clear and color, our other sealers in our line. These we want an actual 90 minutes for these to dry before recoating them. Being solvent-free, they just take slightly longer for the water to evaporate, and we don't want water soaking into the floor from here. Again, they can be single-coated, they can be double-coated. I would say on a white oak surface, we're pretty much going to recommend you to do 2 coats because we want to take the permeability down because we have decent tannin blockers in this product, but as thin as we're putting it on, we need a little bit more product to really help dissolve that tannin so that it doesn't show once we put a water-based finish on there. So on a white oak, not 100% necessary, but you will have better luck with doing a second coat of these products. I kind of think of it like painting a wall. There's a lot of paints out there that say you can paint them in 1 coat. I promise you it's easier and it's going to be a better job if you do it in 2 with paint and with these as well. So we'll keep moving this back. We're going to let this dry for about an hour, and then we're going to put some another coat on and then some finish. So thanks for watching, guys, and yeah, hit us up with any questions. All right, guys, so Pallmann Pall-x Power, if you want to stick with me for a minute here, single component technology in the waterborne world, Basically, we're turning a liquid from a solid, and your little balls of urethane have legs on them, and they join together, and that's what is left on the floor as the water and the other chemicals evaporate. And in single component technology, you could create anywhere from 6 to 8 molecular bonds. And a two-component product, when you add a catalyst or an isocyanate, you're basically generating 18 to 20 molecular bonds by adding that accelerant to the product. And that's why there's always been a gap in a single component to a two-component performance level, is you can simply make the urethane grow more legs and attach together. That's the simplest way to talk about it. This is a new raw material to the industry about 6 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been 6 years, but about 6 years ago, this formulation came out, and Power is generating 18 molecular bonds out of a single component product. So it is right at a level of a two-component, laboratory tested, right at the level of a two-component performance level out of a single component bottle with no waste, nothing to throw away, no mixing, easier to repair because of the single component aspect. But that's kind of the nerdy explanation as to why this is really changing the industry. Basically, the chemicals in here allows the urethane to grow without adding a catalyst. So that's kind of what Power is on the nerdy side. This is RJ with Pallmann here in my very special gold shirt today to talk about our two-component product, Pall-x Gold. It is not gold in color, it just is the gold standard of two-component products. Basically, the highest performing product in the line, two-component performance with Pallmann's ease and forgiveness of application. And what's really unique about the Pallmann line, we haven't touched on a lot in this set of videos, is that we're a non-UV sensitive line. That's where the clarity comes from in our products. We're not adding a UV inhibitor to protect our raw materials from ambering or fading. These products are non-UV sensitive, everything in the line. So if you put it on a piece of glass, it has no ability to amber or fade with time. So that's one of the real benefits to the Pallmann line and where it gets its clarity from. And then Gold is our isocyanate hardened two-component product. So it's the top of our line. So we're going to mix them up and we're going to put some down today to kind of show you how to do it. I'm a roller, so we're going to roll it down and we're going to kind of show you that. So each one comes in a box, not in a box of 3, and it will come with component A. It'll come with your stop tag. It'll come with component B in the bottle, so if you have the box, you don't have the opportunity to lose a bottle somewhere. And then it will come with the filter that gets added in after we add the two together, not to slow it down. So, like everything in the Pallmann line, shake it. You cannot overshake them. So give them a good shake. Give it a little. And again, the defoamers are so good in this product line, you can't overshake them. So shake them as much as you can, as much as your arm will take. The component B, it just needs a gentle shake. It doesn't need to be agitated nearly as much, but give it a shake. Make sure that it's nice and liquid. Take your bottle, open your bottle. I like to get rid of that right away so it doesn't fall on the floor anywhere. So this we want to pour in relatively quickly, but we don't want it just completely glugging in. So just pour it in as normal. Give it a second to make sure you get all of the good stuff out of component B. It's still dripping a little bit, so get all that in there. Now is not a great time to take a phone call. Any two-component product, get your filter in place, put your cap back on, and agitate it as soon as you can. You don't want this to sit for 5 minutes because the hardener is sitting on the bottom reacting with that part of component A, so you want to get it agitated together as soon as you can. Now that product's mixed. This is going to have anywhere from a 4 to 6 hour pot life for usage at this point. And there is no real wait time. Any two component, if you give it a minute or two just to allow the reactions to start, a little bit more forgiving, but in all honesty, it's a mix and pour. So as you're going through a job and you mix up that last gallon, you don't have to wait 5 minutes. You can just start coating with it immediately. All right, so we've got our Pall-x Gold mixed together. We've got a panel here that we put 2 coats of Pallmann white seal on yesterday. We have a couple of footprints in it, so if you get up close on the video, we are in a warehouse, so please excuse those for us. So we let this 2 coats of white seal dry overnight, and now we're going to go ahead and apply the first coat of Pall-x Gold. It's already mixed. We have the Pallmann roller. Can be rolled, T-bar, pad code. Very forgiving product. Hit your coverage rate, 450 to 500 square feet per gallon, and this product's going to perform as advertised. So from here, we're going to pull out a relatively good sized puddle. We need to saturate the roller. And we want a completely saturated roller. And what I mean by that is as you roll it with no pressure, it's picked up all that product. So this roller is not saturated yet. When you're rolling it back and forth, so now we're having a harder time picking up. We got it all picked up. So we are still not completely saturated. We want to start with a fully saturated roller so that you don't have a thin spot right where you started. And it's pretty amazing how much product these rollers will handle. So now we're starting to slide and not quite picking it all up. So now I'm comfortable that we are saturated. So we would cut in with a brush or pad coat here. I'm always going to take my roller and put a cross grain line along any cut-in spot because I want the same thickness from the brush or pad coat to the roller. And the roller's always going to be a little bit thicker. Then once I'm there, I'm going to pour about a 3 to 4 inch wide puddle. Again, we're on a 4x8 panel, so we're going to be a little bit less product on the floor here. But this width of puddle, you'll be able to pull back about 5 feet. And as long as you pour that with a puddle everywhere, the roller's going to set this product down at the exact same coverage rate every time. It doesn't have to do with the applicator. It has to do with how much you pour on the floor. And so I'm going to work across it once, just getting the floor wet. I like to straighten this line, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to airplane off. And that's that section. Then I'm going to pour into my wet. So I'm not going to pour back out here on the dry, because what I feel happens is that you end up with a little spot past the puddle that ends up a little bit thinner. So I'm going to pour wet onto wet. And then I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to kind of smear that product around just real quick. Just get it into my square. When I get to here, if you leave a real heavy line out there, you can scoop that up like that. Come just behind your wet line and feather that out. And if you have a wall of stair treads behind you, be careful not to hit your elbow on them. And then we're just going to repeat those squares over and over and over, and that's the entire process. All right, guys, Pall-x Gold comes packaged in the single box with the hardener, both A and B components in this box, so you can't lose them. 3 sheens on this one, matte, satin, and semi-gloss, 14, 22, and 36 with the 35, excuse me, on the GU scale. We have a matte here, but the new formulation, we pulled the sheen down on the satin about 4 to 5 points because we felt it was too shiny. So the new formulation will be stickered on the box for the new sheen level. And then that sheen is going to match across Power, 96, and Gold, whereas Gold was slightly shinier before in the satin. So we're getting them much closer to each other. So 3 sheens available on this, 4 sheens available in gloss, 3 sheens in Power. Not a lot of people use gloss, so we don't have a lot of it. 3-day cure time, and combine on top of any of our sealers, two-coat system. That's the Pallmann system. We're going to add on, talk about our cleaning kit a little bit and kind of how to use it and where to use it. First of all, we know that there's another cleaner out there that's in every box store and everywhere. The cleaner that's in here is less residue than the other one. But even more to the point here, so this kit's available with a mop, the microfiber mop, a dusting mop, a pole, and a 32-ounce ready-to-use spray gun in here. What I like to do as a former contractor, when you're done with your floor, now you can have an opportunity to hand something off to the homeowner as a, as a leave behind gift and also as an education piece. And so this comes with a trifold. And what I like to do is now you're handing off a perfectly finished floor that you just spent the week on or however long working on. Well, now you can hand them this. You can go through this little trifold with them of what their responsibilities are now that you're done. This is now their floor, and this is their responsibilities to take care of it and kind of what they can loosely expect. Obviously, floors are going to be, they're going to vary. Their permanence is going to vary on how they're used. But if with this system, you can give them a very reasonable expectation of what to expect in the future, and then it's not, you did this floor and they drag a chair across it and a week later they're calling you saying you didn't do a good job, the finish didn't perform right. It's just a nice way to kind of turn the responsibility of this beautiful floor that you just gave them over to them, and a nice feel-good point of, leaving something behind for them to get them started on the right path of maintaining this investment. So that's the Pallmann floor cleaning kit. It's a wonderful cleaner, and I would strongly suggest just try giving this out on the next couple jobs and see what response you get from your homeowners. So.